Welcome in. It's me, Jeff Nowak. I'm your host for Inside Black and Gold. I had to give Steve the night off because he is currently somewhere, a few thousand feet above the ground. He's in the plane with the team. But so I had to take this on my own, but I think I have enough. I think I have enough to keep you entertained for the next half hour, 45 minutes. This is going to be the first edition of our post game kind of reaction podcast. These are going to post on Monday morning in the podcast feed. So this will be a more refined version that I edit once I'm done, blabbering on to you guys. And so make sure to check that out. Make sure to subscribe to Inside Black and Gold wherever you get your podcast. Give us a review, give us a rating, tell us what you think. But yeah, so let's get right into it. Actually, hold on. This is the YouTube version, so I'm going to start over. I'm going to do an actual podcast lead in so I don't have to re-record it later. So hold on. Welcome in, Saints fans, to another episode of Inside Black and Gold. It's going to be the first post-game podcast, and we have a good one to talk about. The Saints did just about everything I can think of to lose a game that they ended up winning 27-26 over the Atlanta Falcons. They trailed by 16 points with about 12 minutes to go. And if that sounds familiar to you, it was very similar to how the game went. I want to say, what was it, week 8, week 9 in the Superdome last year. I think in that game, the Falcons led 24-6 with about 8 minutes to go. And Trevor Siemian actually led the Saints all the way back, and they got ahead 27-25. At least, I think it was 27-25. And then, Cordero Patterson caught a long pass down the sideline. And that was after the Saints kicked the go-ahead field goal today. I was just like, someone find Cordero Patterson. If he catches a 50-yard pass and they lose this, yeah, that's going to be rough. But, man, that was awful until it was fun, right? It's very similar to the LSU game. If you want to go back and go to the Superdome last week for the LSU game where everything was terrible through 3 quarters and all of a sudden you had this crazy comeback, and the difference being, the Saints didn't miss that kick at the end when LSU didn't make the extra point. I'm glad it didn't have to go to overtime because I hate overtime in the NFL. I was glad to see them finish it off. Although, man, that game should have ended a lot earlier than it did. That kind of phantom, the refs really bugged me in that game. And it wasn't about them making mistakes. It was about, do your job. Like in the instance where Jarvis Landry goes out of bounds and it's not apparent, it's not obvious that he went out of bounds. It's their job to make sure that the teams know what's going on. It's their job to explain that to people. And DA can say, yeah, I should have known. But that's part of the ref's job. There are refs there to alert people. And that just seemed odd. And when he called the grounding penalty, he just stood there with this smirk on his face. Like, that's your job. They spiked it because it was not made clear that the clock wasn't running. And whatever, it's DA's first head coaching game. I get it. That might be something that, down the road, he'll be a little better at. We might look back on this and laugh and say, man, yeah, that's a sign of a first-time head coach, or at least a head coach that hasn't been a head coach in a while. But, that's got to be on the officials to make sure that the teams know what's going on, because it's not obvious. I saw it in real time because I was watching it on a broadcast. They're watching it from the sideline. They don't know he stepped on the edge. And you have 3 seconds where you have to make that decision. And they're sprinting out there and they're trying to clock it as fast as they can. And then you get a penalty because of that. It was like, just blow the play dead. You're not gaining anything from spiking it. I thought that was a BS situation that could have been avoided. There was a few other instances. The holding call on Marshawn in that last drive, I mean, it was weak at best. I thought the roughing penalty when the clock was reading zeros, I mean, geez. And these are all instances where, if they don't have to ground that, they don't get called for grounding there, it's first down. They get to run a couple plays, and worst case scenario, make Atlanta burn their timeouts. And they weren't able to do that because when they spiked it, it was third down and then fourth down. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. That was just the stuff at the end of the game that bugged me. The stuff that bugged me at the beginning of the game was a whole lot worse. And, I always kind of err on the side of let's assume the quarterback is involved in the issues that are plaguing the offense, right? You don't want to give somebody a pass just because, you like them or you want them to succeed. But in this case, I'm giving Jameis a pass for the first half of that game because the protection, the offensive line production was atrocious. It was awful. It was awful. And you can put some of that on the quarterback, and I'm sure Jameis will take it when he goes through film. He'll say, "You know what? I needed to ID the coverage is better. I needed to set the protection better. I needed to make sure everything was communicated. I needed to get the ball out quicker. All this stuff." But at the end of the day, you can only play football, right? You can't like teach the guy how to play football in front of you. If he's getting blown off the snap, if Cesar Ruiz getting chucked to the side and Grady Jarrett's about to eat your lunch, there's only so much you can do. And so I think this is a team that will figure that out. But man, that was rough. That was rough. And, I said this going in to the preseason finale where you were trying to figure out whether you wanted to get guys reps. And, it was always going to be a question of, I get it. I understand why a team would go into the preseason and say, hey, we had to start 58 players last year. That had never happened before in NFL history. We overhauled the training staff. We're going to do everything in our power to make sure that we get to the regular season healthy. But I think what you saw in that first half, and it wasn't all on this, but I think you could explain away a lot of the issues by saying this was a rusty team. They essentially treated the first half of that game, the first 3 quarters of that game, as their preseason. I mean, did it not look like there was one team was playing a preseason game and another team was playing a regular season game in the first half? Right? Because that's what it looked like to me. It looked like when the Saints faced the Chargers' third team defense with Jameis Winston as quarterback. And I was like, wow, this offense is way better than that defense. And, I thought that was very frustrating to see. And I think it could have been avoided by, obviously you don't want to overload people in the preseason, but geez, get them out there. Get them. If you are walking into your regular season opener and the rust is clear, then you have not done a good enough job of preparing the team. And, some guys are insulated from that. I get it, but there's a lot of pieces of this offense that are new and they did not get the off-season time together that you needed to make sure they were, in sync. And good on the Saints. They managed to split that difference. They barely managed to split that difference because I think by week 2, it's not going to be an issue. I think the rust has been knocked off, and you saw that in the fourth quarter, but they were a hair from blowing a game that they may need down the stretch, and I expected them to need down the stretch because of that. And that's, man, if they drop that game, that's rough because you have the Bucs next week. It does not get easier next week. You need to start well because that the middle of the season is so rough. And man, they pulled it out, but they made it tough. They made it tough on me personally because I'm trying to write my takeaways from the game, and I have it all done basically by the time I get into the fourth quarter because I try to post it as the game ends. People want to read stuff immediately as the game ends, and I feel bad because so much of it is written as a kind of, man, I can't believe they blew this game. But I had to just rework it because it's just like, okay, I want this to sound different just because I'm still going to say the same things, but I don't want it to sound like I'm talking about a team that started 0-1 because there's a huge difference between starting 1-0 and starting 0-1. And so if you read my 5 takeaways and you're like, wow, this sounds like a team that lost. It sounds like it's talking about a team that lost. Well, that's because I was writing about a team that I very much thought lost that game. And, as frustrating as all that was, can you imagine if you're on the Falcons side? Does any team blow a lead quite like the Falcons? I don't know if it's possible. I mean, how do you, as frustrating as it is to be a Saints fan, I think at least your frustrations come on the precipice of success, right? You can say that about the Falcons in the Super Bowl. You can say that about the ultimate troll, which is the 28-3, right? But all of these other blown leads, all of these other terrible experiences have come as you're watching a god-awful football team. Just an atrocious football team. And I say don't overreact to week one. Never overreact to week one. But I think if you're a Falcons fan, it's safe to overreact to week one because this is your reality. You just need to accept it. This is what happens to you. I'm sorry. It is. You cannot move past this. This is your life now. I actually thought the Falcons played excellently through the first 3 quarters of that game. I really did. I thought Marcus Mariota looked good. He looked like a guy who's going to continue to be the starting quarterback of that team, and it all fell apart. It all fell apart at the end. I did think that it was so. If you listen to the last podcast, I went through my 3 keys to the Saints dominating that game, not to win that game, to dominate that game. And I think they held up because my first key was stop the run. They did not do that at all. Atlanta did a very Philadelphia-esque job of rushing for over 200 yards, RPOing you to death, just running the pass rush ragged. Props to Pete Werner. He finished with 12 tackles, and he had that incredible TFL at the end of the game that really kind of saved the Saints from themselves. You did not stop the run, which is why Marcus Mariota was able to execute you to death in the third quarter of that game because, you allowed the run game to get going, which made the play action game effective. So you did not do that. My second key, what was my second key? I forgot. Let's see. There it is. Avoid turnovers. That was right. You did not avoid turnovers. Jameis Winston did. If there's one thing you can say about his performance in the first 3 quarters of that game, he was getting eaten alive in the pocket. He didn't turn the ball over, right? I think if he turns the ball over once, the Saints probably lose that game. The margin was that narrow. And, for a guy who can't walk down the street without getting reminded about his 30 interception season and all the fumbles and all the stupid throws and the bad decisions, for him to get through that game without turning the ball over, good on him. Maybe at some point we can start being like, wow, maybe he's not this walking interception. Who knows? But yeah, they managed to avoid turnovers throughout much of the game. The only real turnover was Mark Ingram's kind of bizarre, little flip up on that kind of broken play. It actually ended up not hurting the team because I think it was Marcus May and Tyrann Mathieu combined to punch the ball out down at the goal line. So, it was a wash there. But the one that I think it's not considered a turnover by any stretch, but to me, the effect is the same. Will Lutz clanking a 44-yard field goal off the upright is as good as a turnover. It's as good as a turnover because you're taking points off the board and you are giving the Falcons the ball on a quick change with good field position. And I think when you look back at how this Saints defense has performed and when they struggle when you put them in a situation for a quick change and it is immediately followed by a long drive. And that's what you had on that first Falcons touchdown drive where they just, they were able to run the ball. Cordero Patterson, who good on him. He was excellent in this game. I don't know how he ever was considered a wide receiver because he's clearly a running back. That drive was set up by the missed field goal. So, while that's not going to go in the book as a turnover, I consider that as effectively a turnover on the kicker, in my opinion. So you did not avoid turnovers. My third key, show up. They didn't. The Saints did not show up in this game whatsoever until, the final 12 minutes. And we're going to get into a lot more of that in the back half. I want to talk about Mike Thomas. I want to talk about Jameis Winston. I want to talk about all these guys and how they really got it done down the stretch. But first, let's see if there's any good questions in there. Here's Chris Sanders. Mario Davis wouldn't say it. He alluded to it. But yes, Will Lutz's nickname in the locker room is Big Nuts Lutz. And it's a good nickname, but there is actually a second nickname that I learned about today. And I'll let Jameis tell it to you here.
Oh, I knew Illa Willa was gonna hit it. The preparation he had. I mean, he had some adversity last year, overcoming some injuries and bouncing back, man. So I know he was hungry for another opportunity, and he executed.
Did you catch that? Let's play it again and see if you hear it.
Oh, I know Illiwilly was gonna hit it.
Illy Willy. I don't think it's as good as Big Nuts Lutz, but Illy Willy's still a pretty solid nickname. And that was Jameis. If there's any more coming here. Did what? I'm not sure what you're talking about, Murtis. Ben Willard, Winston going to be an issue this year. Don't let the comeback against cover two defense fool you. Again, what is your basis for thinking that Jameis is going to be a problem? He didn't turn the ball over. In my opinion, the only way that Jameis is a problem for this team is if he becomes a turnover prone quarterback. And he has shown through 8 starts with the Saints that he is not a turnover risk. He has now thrown 16 touchdowns against 4 interceptions in his Saints career. So, I guess, you can say, yeah, the Falcons went into prevent, but, that's where you have to make teams hurt, right? You have to win games there. It's not about whether the Saints should overvalue his ability to come back in a game. It's about how you impose your will earlier in the game and execute better in the first half. But I don't put that on Jameis, right? I think he was rusty. I think that his timing with Mike Thomas was off, especially in that first half. But you saw it pick up. You saw it pick up. You saw Jarvis make huge plays. You saw him connect with Jawan Johnson. I thought Chris Olave had a couple really nice plays. So, I mean, this is an offense, like I said, that did not get action in the preseason, and you saw them kind of finding their way in real time. And, again, my concern wasn't so much that the rust continued, it was that you drop a game because you are not playing at your peak performance level in week one, which is kind of the point of the preseason to make sure that you kind of hit the ground running. And you weren't able to do that. And that was my concern. And I think that almost cost them the game here. And the only reason it didn't was because the Falcons blow a lead, as well as just about anybody. Let's go back to the top make sure I didn't miss any comments here. Chemo asked if there's any word on AK-41. I'm not sure. Um, I'm not sure what you're referring to. He wasn't hurt. He had a rough game, but again, I mean, let's see. I'm looking at the stats. 9 carries for 39 yards. Um, didn't catch a pass. Oh no, I'm sorry. 3 catches for 7 yards. Might as well not have caught a pass. Yeah, that's not a great game for him. But when the offensive line is in shambles and not blocking anybody, it becomes difficult to try to establish the run game. My bigger concern with AK is, he's got to protect in the pass game. And there was a third down play in the second half that he and James Hurst, there was a miscommunication, right? There's a blitz coming inside, and someone has to pick up the rusher on the outside. Now, I don't think that you're going to ask Alvin to block someone on the edge one on one. So I think that the issue was Alvin going outside when he needed to go inside. And so that's where I think you're going to look at film and you're going to say, okay, how can we be better in this part of the game so that, we can be effective and you can extend drives. It's hard to run the ball when you're going 3 and out. And the Saints went 3 and out 4 times in the first 3 quarters of that game. And, when you're doing that, you're having the defense on the field way too long, and that's just where it is. The guy I'm more concerned with is Mark Ingram. I don't think he looked good at all, and I think he's a solid player. I think he's a good locker room guy. I don't know if he has the juice left in his legs at this point. We'll see. Maybe 22 re-energizes him. Maybe Jarvis can hype him up. But I was not impressed with him today, and you kind of need to see more out of that RB2 spot, especially if you're turning the ball over. Because if you're turning the ball over, then it's going to be time before long to say, okay, Tony, what have you got? But week one, I'm not super concerned, but I'm more concerned about Mark than I am with Alvin. And part of that is we still don't know. There is a chance Alvin gets suspended this year, and if you end up having to go 6 games or whatever with Mark Ingram as your RB1, you better be confident that he's the guy. Murtis, the Falcons are the new Aints. I don't know about that, but they man, they just can't get out of their own way. They really, it's tough. I almost feel bad for him. I would feel bad for him if it wasn't so much fun to throw them. I actually didn't think Pete was that bad. And Pete, if you look at I thought McCoy and Pete were the only serviceable members of that offensive line today. Um, it was James Hurst getting beat repeatedly. It was um, Cesar Ruiz getting beat repeatedly, and I think anytime the guard inside is struggling, it's going to make life harder on the tackle. And I think that Ryan had a hard time kind of making up for Caesar because, you know, I have made every excuse for Caesar in kind of the development and saying, okay, he hasn't had a real offseason. Maybe if you give him a real offseason, he will make strides. And I'm interested to go back through the tape and see how he held up in the fourth quarter because Jameis did have time to throw, and obviously the Falcons' defensive scheme played into that. But maybe they figured something out. Maybe the communication was better. I don't know, but I don't think that the Falcons are the most dominant defensive front you're going to end up seeing if you're the Saints, and they're going to have to get that figured out. Now, if you go back to week 2 of last season, you had a very similar game, right? The Panthers had a lot of kind of zone blitz schemes. The communication wasn't good. Caesar was actually playing center in that game, and the Saints offensive line got eaten alive. But the team was able to come back and improve that in week 3 and beyond. So hopefully this is a situation where you've now seen some of the warts of this group and you can start to correct the issues and help where you need to help. I was surprised that Nick Vannett was inactive today. I think that you need an elite blocking tight end with this group, and they did not have it. And I think that was an issue today. So I would expect to see him active next week. And, it's just going to be a question of who do you deactivate um, because I don't think you wanna lose Juwan. I don't think you wanna lose Taysom, who I'm gonna take a victory lap on because I've been telling everyone to draft this guy into their final pick in fantasy, and I don't know if anyone took my advice, but I took him in all the leagues, so good on me. Um, I went against the guy who started Cole Kmet, who got 0 points. So I will take my Taysom Hill QB power to the bank. Um, but yeah, I think it's tough. It's tough. Troutman didn't do anything today. He's another guy. Ruiz and Troutman, man, that 2020 draft is really starting to look rough. And I think when you go back, if 5 years down the road, you're going to get a more honest assessment of that draft. And I guarantee you, what you're going to end up hearing is, yeah, we didn't do enough scouting because we weren't able to. We didn't get a good enough read on a lot of these guys, and that's why we missed on a couple picks. But yeah, that that draft class is starting to look rougher and rougher. Although, I think Pete Werner was it? No, Pete Werner wasn't in that class. Who was the second round pick of that class? Oh, that's right. They didn't have a second round pick. Yeah, that's right. They didn't have a second round pick. They had 2 third-round picks, and it was Zach Vaughn and Adam Troutman. But yeah, I think you're going to look back at that draft and be really frustrated with it. But yeah, I think you're fine with Pete. I know that it's easy to hate Pete. Pete is a very much replacement level guard in the NFL. And one thing that he excels at is pulling in the run game. And that's something you need your guard to do. You need them to be elite in one aspect of the game. And I think he is very much above average in the as a pulling guard. So, you know, that's the problem with Caesar is I can't find any of the redeeming qualities that you need. But yeah, I think the Pete and McCoy were solid. But yeah, I think Hurst needs to be better. Louise needs to be better, and hopefully Ramczyk can kind of solidify that side of the line and help drag things along. But yeah. Teams aren't just trading left tackles. It's you don't see a lot of trades made mid-season in the NFL because it's very difficult to assimilate a new player into a system, on the fly. It's even more rare to see that be an offensive lineman, a quarterback, guys who need a very strong understanding of the schemes and the communication. Um, you'll see skill position players move around because a lot of what they're doing is very formulaic. They're all running the same routes. They have a lot of the same schemes. It's just a matter of how they identify them in the terminology. But you're going to have a hard time trading for a left tackle. You just got to make it work. And you're not going to have Trevor Penning for a while. And Hurst has to be better. I don't think you're going to find a better option. And maybe there's a free agent that you can bring in and maybe get a tryout and see if they can make an impact. But right now, you're sticking with Hurst. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I mean, I think to some degree the Falcons went into a shell, and Michael Cummings says the Falcons did not go into prevent. What game were y'all watching? The last two Saints possessions, the Falcons were not in prevent. Let's just give Winston the offense credit for a great comeback. And I think I'm going to have to kind of see the film tomorrow and kind of get a better idea. But yeah, I don't think that when I watch that, I'm going to see a team that just sat back and waited. But it was a team that I think laid off some of the pressure um, because they didn't feel like they needed to, and it burned them on that one quick drive where I think the Saints got down the field in 4 plays. It Jarvis Landry got him down to the goal line. Uh, Jameis hit Mike Thomas, on a little fade, and then they hit Olave for that 2-point conversion. And I think that was the one drive that you could probably go back and say, yeah, they definitely laid off on that drive. Um, and then the momentum turned, and the Saints got a little confidence. Jameis and Mike got a little confidence. Jarvis, I thought, played great. Olave, I thought, played great. And yeah, I think that's what you saw. But I don't think that this is like last year. You go back and you watch the Trevor Siemian games. That is what was happening. Teams were just going into his shell, saying he's not going to beat us, and he was able to make hay in that final quarter. I don't think that's necessarily what happened here, but I'll have to see tomorrow. 985 lives says the O-line was trash, and what was wrong with Mike T falling down? I have a feeling that somewhere Sean Payton was watching the game and muttering to himself about the wrong cleats because it sure did seem like Mike was having a hard time getting some traction. And it happened twice. He slipped, and on both those plays, you could attribute it to a rough throw by Jameis with the ball behind him, and he had to try to make a cut back and his feet went out from under him. And so, if the throw was on point, you wouldn't have had to try to cut back at the last second. And I think that's where you lost your footing. But at the same time, I'm starting to think Sean's obsession with cleats might have been warranted because we saw this in the preseason finale, I think, or one of the preseason games. It might have been up in Green Bay. The players are falling down and slipping. And we saw it again today. I didn't see a lot of players slipping. So maybe this is a Mike T thing. And maybe he needs to worry about those cleats. But as we talked about Mike, we talked about his touchdown, and now one thing that I thought was funny, you saw on that touchdown, his celebration was throwing the ball in the stands. That's what he had to say.
Actually, they threw it back, so I do have it. But I had a lot of I had actually had a lot of like thoughts in my head on how I would probably celebrate, but knowing the situation of the game and you can't get any penalties there, or you don't want to get anything to hurt this team, so kept it simple and put points on the board. We came back, got 2, and then we got on the roll.
There you go. He got the ball back. So to recap, Michael Thomas scores a touchdown, throws the ball into the stands, and the Falcons fan throws it back to him, and he says, "You know what? Thank you, because I actually wanted to keep this. This is my first touchdown catch in 2 years almost." So good for you, Falcons fan. I've never understood that. I've never understood that. If you went to a game and you got a football thrown to you that you could take home and say, "This is a touchdown catch by Michael Thomas in Mercedes-Benz Stadium," and you throw it back, like that is the lamest thing a fan could do, in my opinion. But hey, Mike's not complaining. But all right, I'm going to cut that segment off there. You're listening to Inside Black and Gold. This is the Saints Falcons post-game podcast. I'm going to hit a quick break, get a drink of water because my throat is failing me. And then we're going to come back. We're going to hit some more. We're going to look forward a little bit, answer more viewer questions, and get some more audio. Thanks to everyone who's watching. We got over 100 people in here right now, which is great. And stick around. I'll be back in a minute. Okay, we are back. Again, this is the post-game edition, the first 2022 season post-game edition of Inside Black and Gold. We are just reacting to the madness that we saw in the Week 1 showdown between the Saints and the Falcons. Here are some stats, some numbers to throw at you. Taysom Hill, 57-yard run in the first half. That was the longest run by a Saints player since 2017. That's from ESPN Stats and Info. That surprised me because, I've seen Alvin Kamara have a couple long plays. I think the touchdown against the Packers last year was an example of that, but that was a pass. So it's tough to say, just a run from under center. I guess that would make sense. 16 points is the biggest fourth quarter comeback in franchise history. Prior to that, they had been 0 for 208 in games where they entered the fourth quarter trailing by 16 or more. So good job, Falcons. You're in another record line somewhere. Jameis's stats through the first 3 quarters: 10 for 18, 56 yards. His stats in the fourth quarter: 13 for 16, 212 yards, and a touchdown. So yeah, that was a pretty solid fourth quarter. You can say all you want. Okay, they're in prevent, whatever. I don't care. That is elite fourth quarter performance. And he led a 2-minute drill to get the Saints in a field goal range. It wasn't the prettiest 2-minute drill you've ever seen with the kind of blunder on the grounding and, some other issues, but got there. And, getting Will Lutz back, he missed that 44-yarder, which, that's a rare thing to see him miss such a makeable kick like that. But, when he tried it out there for a 51-yarder, I'm not sure I could have felt any more confident. It's actually like the inverse. Like I was watching the Giants Titans game, which the Giants won an opener for the first time in like a decade. And they had a similar situation, but it was Randy Bullock trotting out for a 45, 47-yarder. And it was like the second he came out, I was just like, okay, yeah, this is a miss. Because I don't trust that guy. I don't trust that guy to make a game-winning kick. I trust Will Lutz, to deliver my baby. Like I trust Will Lutz to do anything. Illy Willy, and just having him back is just such a security blanket for this Saints team. But let's see. I had some more audio I wanted to throw at you, so here you go.
No, absolutely, man. Big time players make big time plays. Like that's not like a statement that's just, that's not real. That's very real. And shout out to both of those guys too. This is their first game back on the field in a while. You know what I mean? And they made it plays when we needed them the most. And that's what we're going to need all year.
That was Jarvis Landry talking about Jameis Winston and Mike Thomas. And, take away all the negatives you want from this game. There were serious questions going in about kind of what that relationship was going to be like, kind of the camaraderie, the connection in the game, in terms of you had never seen them complete a pass in an NFL game. Your QB1 and your wide receiver 1 had never completed a pass in an NFL game. And until you saw how that looked, you had to have some questions about it. And I think what we're going to end up seeing with kind of this new kind of version of Michael Thomas is you're not going to see the volume that you had back with Drew Brees, right? You're not going to see a 149 catch season, but I do think you will end up seeing a double-digit touchdown season, which Mike Thomas has never had in his career. Because I think that this is where Jameis and his arm is going to allow you to take advantage of Mike Thomas in other areas of the field that Drew might not have been able to take advantage of with him in the past. And, that first touchdown throw was a dime. That second one was a great route. And, once they kind of get on the same page and they start kind of anticipating each other a little bit better, that's only going to be more impactful. So, I thought from Mike Thomas's perspective, that went about as well as you could have hoped. And good for him. Good for him. He has had a very difficult road back, and he's dealt with a lot of criticism, a lot of it merited, a lot of it not merited, and he's been a very emotionally stable player this offseason. I don't remember him being this congenial with the media. I don't remember him wanting to talk to the media the way he has been lately. And I think he's just really enjoying the fact that he can play football again. And he and Jameis Winston are going to be very good teammates, and they're going to be fun to watch, especially now that he has Jarvis Landry kind of taking some of that pressure off of him. When's the last time that you saw the Saints need kind of a game-winning drive and someone not named Mike Thomas was the guy making that big play? Right? It wasn't, Ted Ginn had a few moments, Jared Cook had a few moments, but by and large, it was either Mike does it or Mike doesn't do it. And that catch by Jarvis on that, on the sideline that ended up kind of leading to that grounding penalty was as good as it gets. It was as good as it gets. He had a catch down to the 4-yard line prior to Mike Thomas's first touchdown, and these are just fun players to watch. They play the game the right way. And, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. When we came out at halftime, we knew we were getting the ball back. We knew we were completely honest with ourselves. We knew we were leaving our defense out there on the field too long, too many 3-and-outs. And we took accountability, and we looked each other in the eyes, and we knew what time it was. Our team needed us, and we needed to respond, and we needed to find a way to win this game, and that's what we did, and that's where the effort came from.
Yeah, and I think that's another answer that kind of shows you, this is a team that is aware, if we leave the defense on the field, if the offense can't take some pressure off the defense, you are asking for trouble. And I did not think that the defense had the wind left to show up and stand up on that final drive. I think that's why, if you're Marshawn Lattimore, you got a little handsy on Drake London there. I thought it was a weak call. I don't know how a rookie gets that call against Marshawn Lattimore, but hey, that officiating crew was something. But they did, and they were put in bad situations, and they did a good job. And I think that this was not their best game by any stretch, particularly the pass rush. The pass rush has to be better. I don't know. I did not go into this game thinking that the Saints would not hit Marcus Mariota once in the pocket, but that's what happened. There was 0 sacks, zero quarterback hits in the pocket. They got him a couple times for TFLs, but that was kind of on the zone read where he kind of already broke in the pocket, so it doesn't technically go as a quarterback hit. But they were absent. They were absent. Contavious Street had a few nice plays. Shai Tuttle had a really good run stuff late in the game that forced a punt, and that's going to be an area of the game that you need to be better. You need to be able to stop the run. And it's weird. looking ahead to a matchup against Tom Brady and thinking, this is what this team needs, is to go against Tom Brady. But I do think from a confidence perspective, from a pass rush perspective, that's exactly the type of player they are built to tee off on, a pocket-bound quarterback who isn't going to make you react outside the pocket. You don't have to play contain, and you can just pin your ears back and go get them. And, as great as Tom Brady is, that's why he has struggled against the Saints, because their interior rush is built to get after the quarterback and collapse the pocket from the inside. And against a guy like Mariota, against a guy like Jalen Hurts, that doesn't help you, because these are guys who want to break the pocket. They want to extend the play. They want to use their athleticism. And, I think we saw some of the limitations with the ends that the Saints currently have in their ability to contain mobile quarterbacks and kind of get outside. They'll get better. They have to get better because they don't get any breaks this year. It seems like they get all the mobile quarterbacks, even a guy like Joe Burrow. He's not a guy who you can just sleep on, kind of like Daniel Jones last year. Like he can run, he can move. He wants to stay in the pocket and throw, but he doesn't have to. But then you have Lamar Jackson, you have Kyler Murray, you have Deshaun Watson, you have Jalen Hurts again. You're not going to get any breaks. You're going to have to get better at this. And like DA said, he hopes not all of his games go this way. And, one way to make sure that's the case is to figure out how to stop these RPOs. But hey, it's tough because you don't want to adjust too much and kind of lose your identity as a defensive line. But you do have to do something. You have to do something different, and you have to be able to slow that down because they just haven't. Jeffrey Brown, how did we win? I honestly, I don't know. It's funny because when they missed the final 2-point conversion, I said at the time, like, I almost prefer that, because as a team, I want to be the team with the ball last that needs a field goal, right? I don't want to be the team on defense saying, okay, maybe if we can stop them from getting to the 45 or the 35, maybe we'll win this game, because it never works. It never works in today's NFL. Murtis, how did they lose? Atlanta wanted the loss more. That's, if this was later in the season, I would have accused Atlanta of just openly tanking. but that's not what they were doing today, right? No one tanks in week one, because you always want to leave that hope open that you get on this magical run and you kind of figure out a way on a season that you shouldn't. But they weren't tanking today, but they definitely know how to lose. No one finds a way to lose quite like the Falcons. Like, there are teams that lose a lot. Like, the Giants are really good at losing. The Jets are really good at losing. The Jaguars are really good at losing. Traditionally, prior to Tom Brady, the Bucs have been really good at losing. But the Falcons just do it so spectacularly. It's almost like, a work of art. Big Earth says Honey Badger looked like he didn't want to tackle. He didn't have the greatest game. He did make a couple nice plays. I think that, you're missing Brett, you're missing CJ there, right? I think there were instances in that game where if this was CJ coming up to lay the wood on somebody, it's going to work. Tyron is not that kind of physical defensive back the way that CJ is. And I think that's the difference when you're trying to run CJ and Tyron in the slot versus a guy like CJ. Justin Evans, I thought, had a rough day. I really would like to see Alontae Taylor worked into the slot more, but I don't think we're going to get that early in the season. He did look good as a gunner. He got downfield real fast. He missed a tackle on the first punt, but he did kind of, anytime someone gets down there early and they force that early move from the returner, that's where you can kind of say, okay, yeah, I mean, you didn't make the play, but you set up the play for somebody else. And I think that's what you saw with that first punt. Because when you're the first guy down there, and the returner can go either direction, making that tackle, is very difficult, right? But forcing them, funneling them to where your support is coming from is almost just as good as a tackle. They might get 6-8 yards, but they are not getting a full head of steam and getting upfield. I thought he did a good job of that. So that's good to see. As a rookie, you have to find ways to impact the game, and I think that's how he's going to be able to impact the game. early on. Our defense couldn't stop the run like we. Okay, Jeffrey Brown, who spells it differently than I do. Jeffrey. Our defense couldn't stop the run. We used to be good against the run? ? Yeah, so it's not. When you go against a team like the Falcons, when you go against a team like the Eagles, it's not your traditional. Okay, hand it off to the running back. They're gonna pick a gap. They're gonna go. You're trying to run a trap. You're trying to pick a zone. It's a lot of misdirection. It's always going the wrong way, right? The whole point of the offense is to get you leaning the opposite direction and then hit you the other way. And then when you do go power, you're a step slow, right? You're always running play fakes. You're always trying to make the defense think that what they're seeing is not what they're seeing. And then with the RPO, you're also able to make whatever decision the defense makes wrong. So it gets you thinking as a defense. And the second you start thinking, you end up on your heels. And that's how a guy like Cordero Patterson, who runs like a bull, can make an impact. So I don't think that, in a traditional sense, I don't think that this team is going to struggle against your more power run schemes, right? But it's something we've seen year after year with these heavy RPO teams. The 4-3 just doesn't work the way you want it to. And I think that down the road, as you get further along, I think you're going to start to see more hybrid fronts, right? Hybrid 3-man fronts where you kind of fill the gaps with the DNs. But it's not what you're built to do. And so that's why I think you struggle in these matchups. You got to get better at it. It seems like every quarterback in the league, every new quarterback, every young quarterback can run. Josh Allen, even Trevor Lawrence, these guys can move. There's no such thing as a pocket-bound quarterback anymore, at least not the ones coming into the NFL, other than maybe Mac Jones. He might be the only young quarterback who I would consider pocket-bound. But yeah, I mean, you're only going to see more and more of these matchups. So you have to figure it out. And to this point, they have not been able to do it. Well, so this is, and that's, it's a good question. Jeffrey Brown asks, why doesn't the defense fake it like they're going to go tackle the quarterback and then go for the running back? But again, the whole point of RPO schemes is to force you to make a decision, and then you are wrong because they do the opposite. And while I think it's a little more difficult than it sounds to say, okay, you're going to take a step toward the quarterback and then work back, because these are professional football players. These are the best athletes in the world. And if you get a step out of position, they're going to blow by you, and it's also not always a matter of, okay, I can go this way or I can go that way. They're reading the backside or they're handing off across from that, so it's not that necessarily the run is coming at you. The quarterback is holding the ball out in front of him and he's looking at you. And if you are reading him, or if you are keying on him, he's going to hand it off. If you're trying to get inside and kind of scrape over to the running back, then he's going to keep it. And so it's not as simple as, just trying to fake him out. But you will see guys do that. You'll see DNs be able to fake out and get back and cover. But, it's, if you do that and you get burned, then you're going to be discouraged pretty quickly. And again, these guys are fast. These guys are strong. You don't want to get out of position if you can avoid it. Yeah, Rainey worried about the RPO mostly. LSU 337. This team has so much grit. They do. That is something that Dennis Allen said, and I do have a clip from Dennis Allen I can play here, which, he kind of got to that point.
It wasn't perfect. There's a ton of things that we got to get cleaned up. I told them all in there, look, enjoy the win, but have tough skin tomorrow. Because we're not going to win a lot of games playing the way that we did today. We're going to have to play a lot better if we expect to be the type of team that we think we can be. And so, but I'm proud of the way that they fought. They competed all the way to the end. We got a little something going when we got into a little bit more of a 2-minute type of mode with the offense and got a little rhythm going. So, so look, I'm happy that we won the game. A lot of things that we got to get cleaned up, and we'll get back to work tomorrow and see if we can't get them cleaned up.
What was kind of the...
Yeah, and we're keeping on the RPO theme. I mean, they drill this stuff. They drill this stuff. I think it's more of a personnel issue than necessarily a scheme issue, right? You are not built to play college football, right? And that's how teams that might be underserved on the skill department are able to kind of level that playing field because they're running college schemes. This is a college offense that Atlanta is running right now, and that's not to say it's a bad offense, but it's just the type of schemes you were seeing in college kind of working its way up to the NFL. And it's when you're set up to do one thing and then you end up facing a team that is not going to do that, you're going to have a hard time. And it's frustrating to watch in the regular season. It's going to be a lot more frustrating if it ends up happening in the playoffs, right? And so that's what you need to figure out, because you beat the Falcons today, right? The Falcons are a bad football team. Not all the teams you face are the Falcons. Not all the teams you face make an art form out of blowing a 2-score lead in the fourth quarter. And if you played the way you did today against the Eagles, against the Ravens, against the Cardinals, you're going to get blown out of the water. So I think that's where, when DA says, yeah, I mean, you're going to enjoy this. You enjoy wins. Wins are hard to come by, right? Like you don't just say, you know what, this was a win against a bad team. We don't get to enjoy this one. But I mean, that is not going to be a pleasant film to go over. The fourth quarter film on the offensive side, you're gonna see a lot of positive things, but you got to go through the first 3 quarters too. And you're gonna see Cesar Ruiz getting just mauled by Grady Jarrett. You're gonna see James Hurst and Alvin Kamara not communicating and picking up the blitz. You're gonna see Jameis getting just eaten alive. One thing to keep in mind too, Jameis went into the injury tent and he definitely was favoring one of his legs a little bit. I think it was a lower body issue that he was dealing with. I don't know how serious it was, but he definitely had something going on. And like, that's the thing. When you allow your quarterback to get eaten up in the pocket, you're asking for trouble. You're asking for injuries. And, there was a point in that game that you saw Andy Dalton warming up on the sideline, and it was almost like Jameis saw that and was just like, oh, hell no. And after that point, he was Superman. He came in and he dominated. But it was like, it almost felt like it needed that. It's like, you want to see Andy Dalton in this game? Because if not, you better figure it out. And they did. So, at the end of the day, it is 1-0, 1-0 on the season. And you come back home, you face the Bucs, and you try to go 2-0. And my upper projection that I think, my lower projection that I think the Saints kind of need to start at was 4-1, because the middle of the season gets so difficult. And that's why this loss would have felt really damaging long term. And we saw last year what can happen when you just don't take care of business in these games that you should win, with the Giants and the Falcons. And this was a game that looked very much like it was one that we'd get to week 18 and be like, man, if they'd only not laid an egg against the Falcons, so being able to take that down and move forward, survive and advance is very much a thing. And the Bucs are going to look at this tape too. They're going to see a lot of those issues on the offensive line. Yeah, so you're going to have to figure that out. Jeffrey is very active in this chat. Saints are usually a second half team. I assume you mean in the second half of the season. I am interested to see how that pans out, because I think the Saints being a second half team had a lot to do with Sean and Drew. There are things that I don't think that you necessarily need to overvalue when it comes to Sean and Drew. I think that you can do a lot of the same things. But when it came to just understanding the game, making adjustments, improving throughout the course of the season, that is something that I attribute to coach, quarterback, scheme, and film study. So I am interested to see whether that kind of trend, which is very real in the second half of seasons, especially the last few seasons, the Saints have been very good. So we'll see if that continues. We didn't get to see it last year with Jameis getting hurt in halfway through the season after 7 starts. But yeah, I'm still just I wish I could have a day to kind of digest before coming on and doing these pods, because I just feel like I'm trying to remember all these things that happened, and until you look at the film, you just can't. You can't know how it all went down. But I think what we'll end up seeing when I look at that tomorrow, hopefully the All-22 comes out. You'll see a lot of missed assignments. You'll see a lot of late reactions, and that's going to be stuff that you have to fix going forward, because it's not going to get any easier next week with Tom Brady and the Bucks. Big Irv, are we still worried about Ruiz and Hurst? Oh, yes. We went in worried about Ruiz and Hurst, and we left worried about Ruiz and Hurst. Whenever Taysom was in that game, we did good, so I don't know why they don't use him a lot more. I think they will use him more. I think they're still trying to find his role in the offense in terms of what exactly can you do. And I think to some extent, you do have to consider, taking Jameis off the field over and over again is going to impact his rhythm. And you have to be conscious of that when you make those decisions. Now, I think there was only one instance where he took 2 snaps in a row, that he being Taysom Hill at quarterback. And the first was a QB power where Jameis was off the field. And the second was a QB power where Jameis was on the field, split out wide. And so, those are the 2 types of personnel that you get to do that with, because one gives you an extra blocker. The other one gives you the element of surprise. And so that's where you're going to see it. I was surprised we didn't see that more. I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. I think that we will primarily see that down in the red zone and in gold, in short yardage situations, because I don't know how you stop that. He's going to be their best short yardage running back. And I said this morning on First Take, and it panned out about as well as it could have. If I'm an Alvin Kamara fantasy owner, I despise Taysom Hill. I despise him. But damn, if you got a high waiver claim, I'm picking him up, because I think he's going to end up being a top 10 tight end, because he's going to get touchdowns like he did today. Okay, a couple more questions. Let's see. Ben Willard wants to know, what's the status on Paulson? He missed the day. He was ruled out on Friday. He has not practiced in about 2 weeks. It's an ankle injury. We don't know much more than that. I think part of it is, you've already experienced what trying to play through an ankle injury can do long term. You are a team that expects to be in the playoffs, and you want to make sure he is healthy before he comes back. So I think that's what you're seeing. And so I don't know if you're going to see him week 2. I don't know if you're going to see him week 3. But if the idea was we're going to keep him out for, 4 or more weeks, then you would have put him on IR. So I don't think that his absence will be longer than 2-3 weeks. But if he's not able to get on the field this week for practice, I don't think he can play. So that's what we're going to have to see. We'll get the first injury report on Wednesday. We're finally back into kind of the normal schedule. So they'll have availability and practice tomorrow. They'll do a lot of film study. We will be out there. We'll be able to get in the locker room and talk to some players. And then they'll be off on Tuesday. They'll be back to practice on Wednesday. And then that will be the first injury report. And we'll get a much better idea of whether, Paulson is trending in the right direction, along with guys like Dwayne Washington, Traquan Smith. But yeah, otherwise, I think anytime you can leave a game without an injury, without a major injury, you have done a good job. You have avoided a potential pitfall in your season. And I think the Saints managed to get through this one healthy. So that is a good thing. But all right, I'm going to cut it off there. Thanks so much for everyone who joined. We got about 130 people in here right now. It's up to 135. Just as I said that, I always appreciate that. I know that I tend to ramble And so I appreciate that people are interested in following along. I'm going to have to trim a lot of this down for the podcast that'll post tomorrow morning. It's called Inside Black and Gold. If you came in here late, if you want to check it out, that'll be posting hopefully around midnight, assuming I can get that edited. And, make sure to hit that subscribe button, rate and review. As you can tell, I am tired. It's been a long day. I started with First Take at 8 a.m. this morning. It is now 8 o'clock at night, and I'm still working. So there you have why I might seem a little groggy. But maybe next week I'll force Steve to do this solo. he doesn't have to travel next week. So worst case scenario, you'll get both of us. But again, thanks for everyone for listening. We'll be back at you. We still haven't. I think the next time we're going to record is probably maybe tomorrow. It's tough because we won't have a ton more information, but we'll be able to talk to players. So maybe we'll record tomorrow and have an episode Tuesday. I think that would be the best idea. Then we'll record another on Wednesday and have an episode Thursday, kind of heading into the weekend. So that's probably the schedule. So keep an eye out for that. This is our 3-day a week schedule. We're still kind of figuring it out. We had been 2 episodes a week, but we're shifting to 3 in the regular season. But yep, next on to the Bucs in week 2. Hopefully it's a little less stressful than this one. All right, y'all. Be easy. Peace.